All right, I get it. You're asking, Eric, why in the world did you make a diesel transfer tank when you already have a diesel tank? And so if you watch my other videos, I made a couple videos on these gas tanks and diesel tanks, and these have worked really well for me. But I already have this diesel tank here. Why did I make another one? Well, number one, because it's fun, duh. But the biggest reason is this thing is scary to move around when it's full. It's very heavy. It's rolling it in out of a pickup just is not going to happen. Even half full, it was terrifying to get it out of the truck. When it's full, it's just not going to happen with me. And even getting in and out of this trailer was difficult. And it doesn't sound like it would be that bad with wheels, but it's not easy. I'm just saying that. So what I was doing before was I was loading that up in the trailer, driving the trailer to the station, filling it up, bringing it back home, and then bringing it back in here. Ta-da! And now it's full. Now it's ready to go. But what I started thinking about was, why didn't I just have a transfer tank in the back of my diesel that I can just throw in there when I need to and fill it up, bring it home. Then I can fill up my diesel tank when it's low. I can fill up my tractor when it's low, and the rest I'll just put in my diesel pickup. And so that's worked really well. So last time I went to the station, filled this up with 55 gallons, just put it in the bed, strapped it down, filled it up with 55 gallons, brought it home, hooked it up to the tractor, filled up the tractor, came in here, filled up that because that thing was empty, and the rest of it I just dumped in my diesel pickup. And now this is empty. Now I just take it out of the bed. It's light. I can lift it with two hands. It weighs almost nothing. There's a little bit of fuel in the bottom of it. It's a little bit heavier right now, but I can lift this with two hands, put it in the corner, forget about it until it's the next time I need to use it. So the biggest reason I made this diesel transfer tank actually has to do with time efficiency. For example, when I was only using the red diesel tank, you know, the one with wheels, it was pretty easy to fill up and bring it home on the trailer. But I would only be able to fill up the tractor, you know, about 1.5 times. On the other hand, using this 55-gallon transfer tank, I can fill it up, bring it home, and fill the tractor, and then also fill up the red diesel tank. And now I can literally fill the tractor up 3 times per trip to the fuel station. And I'm not having to hook up the trailer, which also saves time. You guys know that I always enjoy reading your comments. And in my last videos on the wheeled fuel caddies, you had some really good ideas. One of those was, why don't you put a permanent tank on your property, which would be the ideal solution. The only problems in my situation are, one, a tank like that is quite expensive, you know, even a small 250-gallon tank. But two, our road is really bad, and delivery drivers don't like to come to our house. So I'm sure they would charge me extra for delivery if they would deliver at all. The other idea was a permanent tank in the back of my truck, which I've almost done several times. The problem for me is this Ram Mega Cab bed is only 6.5 feet long, and I just can't sacrifice any bed space. So right now, this seems to be the best solution for me. And if there's a few gallons of fuel left in it, heavy enough that I don't want to carry it, I just dolly it. Okay, and the big problem for me was trying to figure out how to mount it, and I'd appreciate any feedback you guys want to leave in the comments of how you might have done this. I thought about, making a frame that I could just set out of metal or wood in the bottom of the bed of the truck and then set this inside so it wouldn't wobble around. That was a good idea, but I'm trying to keep it as simple and light as possible. So I ended up coming up with this little X frame on top. This is just 1 inch flat by 1/8 thick, and it just makes sort of an X shape at 4 different points along the top of the barrel. It sits on top of the barrel seam. This piece of metal here is about 4 inches wide or so, and it's just like 14 gauge. It's not very thick, welded to the top of that X frame, and that way that allows me to mount the pump and the battery box as well. I did use riv nuts in the top of this. Riv nuts worked really well. They stuck out a little far, so I ground them down a little bit and then just had to use some shorter screws and bolts to make sure they didn't go through and cut the top of the tank. And it seems to hold the battery pretty good. And you can see there the riv nuts don't really poke through very far. And the top of the X does, or right in the middle of the X, it does touch the top of the tank, but it's nice and smooth there, so it's not going to abrade the tank. The battery sits in there nice and stable. I like that. It's got room to kind of trap the cables there, to trap the hose, and a little bit of space there just to keep the cables in place. Now, as far as mounting it to the barrel, this seam is an interesting part of this barrel. You can see I put a 1/4 inch bolt through here and a lock nut on the other side. I welded a tab right here on the X and drilled just a 1/4 inch hole, and then drilled a 1/4 inch hole through the barrel itself. And the seam is actually pretty thick. So see right there where the top of my finger is, that's the outer seam. And this is a factory hole. And you can see if you look inside there, there's no crack, there's no seam at all, there's no split. And so the actual seam is sealed below that. And so, you know, I was worried about it leaking if I drilled a hole in the top of the seam. This seam is lower than my seam, and right at the top of my finger, right there seems to be where the seam goes down to. So there's plenty room as far as the, you know, not making a leak. That was my big worry. And so these bolts right here are way above where we make a leak on it. And it just made 4 of those all the way around. It's nice and stable. Now these D-rings, I just made out of bent rebar with the Harbor Freight bender and welded them on. Kind of made a little bit of a tapered angle so that they'll, you know, I can put my tie downs on and then tie it down either to the trailer or to the bed of the truck or inside the enclosed trailer or whatever, down to the E-track, that kind of thing. It seems to work well. I could have made it a little bit steeper angle, I think, to make it match a little bit better, but it seems to work fine. The welds are nice and solid. And I can either tie it down with 2 points, and that seems to work well, just 2 points. I have the option for 4 points if I need to, but once this is full of fuel, it's heavy. This thing weighs a lot, and it's not going to go sliding around by itself. Diesel weighs about 7 pounds per gallon, so yeah, 385 pounds. This little rebar hook for the nozzle, I should have offset a little bit so it wouldn't be in line with the tie down. I wanted to put a little vent in here, like drill a hole and put a vent that I could just flip a lever and it would automatically vent it. Because if you're pumping and you forget to vent it, it sucks the sides in. I wanted to do this anyway for the fill cap, so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and do this. So I just cut a couple pieces of polypropylene panel and wedged them down there. And of course, there's 4 of these notches. There's 2 notches. There's 2 notches here and there's 2 notches here. So I just made them wide enough to drop into those 2 notches and just filled it with 5-minute epoxy, and it seems to work pretty well. And it allows me to tighten this down by hand, but not over tighten it. Obviously, I'm not using a wrench. And that makes it nice and snug. But if I need to go ahead and vent it, I can just, with one hand, go ahead and loosen it. And that'll be enough to vent it. Then when I'm done, I can just tighten it back down. The last modification for this tank, yeah, right, like there's going to be a last modification, is this switch right here. So this pump obviously has a switch right here, and it works well. It turns on and off. You just hook it to the battery and you turn it on, turn it off. The problem I ran into was up inside my truck, with this sitting in my truck full of fuel, I'm obviously not taking it out because it's full of fuel and it's a few hundred pounds. I would turn the switch on and then have to jump out of my truck and then go over to the nozzle where I was filling it and go ahead and squeeze the nozzle and start pumping. And which might not be that big of a deal, but my concern was this little thing right here. It says no idling. It even says it in the paperwork that came with it, don't idle this pump. Now I don't know what that means. Does that mean 5 seconds? Does that mean 5 minutes? I don't really know. So I thought, well, it would be much more convenient just to be able to turn it on and turn it off and not have to rush back and forth, especially since I injured my ankle. So I went ahead and put this switch in, and here's how this works. So this is just a switch. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested in one of these. It's a DC switch, and it's dual pull, dual throw. So you can actually I just actually use one side. So the hot wire comes in and then switches and goes out the other side. So I just leave this switch on, and then this is my on-off switch here. And so this wire just runs from here, goes, I just electrical taped it around in a few places. It goes all along the hose here, comes up here to the pump, splits off, and goes over here. And here's where I have it buried and attached to a relay. And this is just a little relay right here. It's a 30 amp relay. And I just chose a 30 amp because it's a little heavier than what this demands. The power here is 260 watts, and at 12 volts, that's about 21 amps. So amps times volts equals watts, right? So about 21 amps. So this is a 30 amp relay, and it seems to work well. So these power wires are short, right? You know, they're not very long, but this is small wire. This is like 16 gauge. And so for this short run, you know, from this battery to this pump, you know, pulling 21 amps, I thought, man, that's kind of small wire already. I didn't want to just run this hot wire all the way, you know, and just continue it all the way to that switch and then have that switch come back and then go to the other end of the hot wire and have it go into the pump here, because I thought that's, this hose is like 10 or 12 feet long, so that's another over 20 feet of wiring and 16 gauge wire. You know, even if I use 14 gauge wire or 12 gauge wire, this is the limiting factor. Of course, I could change this out and make it all bigger, but I thought, well, it'll be fun to just use a relay. And so this 30 amp relay just sits here. It does the job. Of course, the hot wire comes in and goes to the relay, and the hot wire also comes out here for the switch, goes up to my switch, comes back, and then of course that hot wire goes to the relay, and then out of the relay it comes over here to this switch. And this switch, of course, I just leave on now, and now I can just flip the switch from right here. Now, I'm not sure I would do this with a gasoline pump, because gasoline fumes and vapors, the gasoline's classified as explosive. Diesel's, of course, classified as flammable. And we all know that diesel is not explosive. So I feel comfortable with this. You know, if you do this kind of thing, you're doing this at your own risk. And honestly, you see people all the time set their pump on top of their tank and then they're pumping right next to it, right? So this has electricity in it. This has switches in it as well. Are they as well contained as that switch? I think this switch is just as well contained as this right here. We'll just leave this switch on and then use this switch to turn it on. I always enjoy reading your comments, so leave me comments down below and let me know what you think. Or if you've done this differently, let me know what you did. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.